Welcome back to Midnight Whispers. Don't forget to subscribe, turn off the lights, and let's step into a new story. I never paid attention to the time at first because routines feel harmless when nothing bad has happened yet. Every night I locked my door before bed, checked the windows, and told myself the house was quiet and safe. I lived alone, which meant every sound belonged to the building settling or to my own movement. The first night it happened, I woke up without knowing why, my heart beating faster than normal for no clear reason. I looked at my phone and saw the time was exactly 2:17 a.m. A second later, I heard my bedroom door open slowly, as if someone was being careful not to rush. I froze in bed, staring at the dark outline of the doorway, trying to understand what I was hearing. The door stopped halfway open and stayed there, unmoving, like it had reached a decision. I waited for footsteps, for breathing, for any sign of another person, but nothing followed. After several minutes, the door closed again with the same careful movement. I convinced myself I must have forgotten to latch it properly before sleeping. The next morning, I checked the handle and found it locked the way I always left it. That should have been enough to scare me. But denial is powerful when fear threatens your sense of control. The second night, I woke up before the sound, already tense, already aware something was wrong. I checked the time again, and it was 2:17 a.m. The door opened the same way, at the same speed, and stopped at the same angle. My chest felt tight as I listened to the silence stretch longer than before. I told myself not to move, not to make noise, not to let whatever routine this was know that I was paying attention. When the door closed again, I lay awake until morning, counting minutes instead of sheep. On the third night, I set my phone to record audio because I needed proof that this wasn't just in my head. I woke up seconds before the time changed, like my body had learned the pattern before my mind accepted it. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the door opened, and my phone captured the soft sound of hinges moving without resistance. I didn't sleep after that. I spent the day listening to the recording, hoping to hear something else hidden underneath the sound. There was nothing except the door and my own breathing. I tried changing my bedtime routine, staying up late, falling asleep on the couch, even sleeping with the lights on. None of it mattered. Every night, no matter where I slept, the sound came from my bedroom. I started checking the hallway before bed, standing there longer than necessary, listening to the quiet like it might confess something. I told myself it was the house, old wood, old air, old habits repeating themselves. But houses don't wait for exact times. On the fifth night, I pretended to stay awake, keeping my eyes open, refusing to blink. When the time came, the door still opened, even though I was watching it happen. Seeing it move without any force broke something inside me that logic could not repair. I wanted to scream, but fear pressed the sound back down my throat. The door stopped halfway open, and stayed there longer than usual, as if it knew I was looking. I felt watched without seeing anyone. When it finally closed, I cried quietly, not from panic, but from the certainty that this was only the beginning. After the fifth night, fear stopped feeling sharp and started feeling familiar, like something that had moved in without asking permission. I began structuring my days around exhaustion, knowing sleep would bring the same moment again. Friends told me I looked tired, but I avoided explanations because saying it out loud made it feel real in a way I wasn't ready for. Every evening, I checked the door, the hinges, the lock, even placing objects behind it to see if anything changed. The objects never moved, yet the door still opened. I started sleeping with my phone in my hand, watching the time creep closer to 2:17 a.m. My body reacted before my mind did, heart racing, skin cold, breath shallow. When the door opened again, I noticed the sound was perfectly consistent, not louder, not softer, like a recording replaying itself. That terrified me more than chaos would have. I began counting seconds from the moment it stopped until it closed, realizing the duration was always the same. One night, I whispered hello into the room, my voice barely existing. The door did not react. The silence felt heavy, like something was listening without needing to respond. I stopped speaking after that. I tried barricading the door with a chair, knowing it was useless, but needing to try. At 2:17 a.m., the chair did not scrape, did not fall, did not move, yet the door still opened to its familiar angle. That was the night I slept sitting up, back against the wall, staring forward until dawn. The next day, I considered leaving, but the idea of running from my own bedroom felt humiliating. I reminded myself this was my house, my space, my life. That confidence faded quickly when night returned. I started noticing other details, like the air feeling colder when the door opened. The smell in the room changed slightly, old and dry, like paper stored too long. I realized I had stopped breathing when it happened, holding my lungs still until the door closed. I wondered if whatever was doing this needed me asleep or awake. I wondered if it would eventually step inside. I stopped setting alarms because time no longer mattered. After 2:17 a.m., the sound of the door began to echo in my head during the day. Sometimes I caught myself staring at it, waiting for it to move on its own. Sleep became shallow and broken, filled with half-dreams that ended before they formed. On the 9th night, the door stayed open longer than usual. I felt something change in that extended pause, like a rule had been broken. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying silently without knowing who I was praying to. When the door finally closed, relief felt wrong, like mercy instead of safety. I knew then that whatever this was, it was learning. I stopped pretending this was normal and started documenting everything in a notebook. I wrote down times, durations, sounds, and how my body reacted. Patterns emerged that I didn't want to see. The door never opened if I wasn't home. It never opened if someone else slept in the room with me. It only happened when I was alone. That realization made my isolation feel intentional. I invited a friend to stay the night, hoping it would stop. That night passed quietly, and I almost felt foolish for being afraid. The next night, alone again, the door opened earlier than usual. The time read 2:14 a.m. My heart pounded as I watched the numbers change. Unsure if the pattern was breaking or shifting, the door stayed open longer than ever before. I felt pressure in my chest, like the room had less air. I wanted to run, but couldn't move. The sense of being observed was overwhelming. Even though I saw nothing, I told myself not to look into the hallway, convinced that if I did, something would look back. When the door closed, it did so slower than before, as if savoring the moment. I barely slept after that. I began hearing the door during the day, even when it wasn't moving. The sound followed me into other rooms, into my thoughts. I tried replacing the lock, the hinges, even the door itself. Nothing changed. The new door opened the same way, at the same time, with the same restraint. I realized then that the door was not the cause. It was just the method. That understanding made me feel very small. I started sleeping with the light on, then all the lights, hoping visibility would protect me. It didn't. The door opened anyway. I started to dread the moment my eyes closed, because waking up had become worse than staying awake. I stopped inviting people over, afraid they would notice how tense I had become. Food lost its taste. Conversations felt distant. My life narrowed to waiting. One night, I heard something different, not louder, but closer. The door opened, and the sound felt like it came from inside the room instead of the hallway. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop myself from making noise. I felt certain that if I moved, something would happen. The door did not close that night. Morning light eventually filled the room, and the door was still open. I didn't close it. I couldn't. I left the house without looking back. I didn't return for 3 days, staying with a friend and pretending everything was fine. Sleep came easier there, but guilt followed closely behind. On the 4th night, I went back, needing answers more than comfort. I sat on the bed fully awake, watching the time pass. At 2:17 a.m., the door did not open. Relief flooded me so fast it made me dizzy. I laughed quietly, convincing myself it was over. Then the door opened wider than it ever had before. I felt something shift in the room, like a tension turning toward me. The air felt heavy, pressing against my skin. I realized the routine hadn't stopped. It had adapted. The door stayed open, waiting. I stood up slowly, every instinct screaming at me to stop. The hallway beyond the door looked the same, empty and ordinary. That made it worse. I stepped forward, my heart beating so hard I thought it might give me away. Nothing happened. No sound, no movement, no sign of anything at all. I stood there until my legs shook. When I returned to the bed, the door closed behind me on its own. That was the last night it opened. I moved out a week later. The new place feels quiet, but not peaceful. Sometimes I wake up at 2:17 a.m. without knowing why. Sometimes I hear hinges in my dreams. I never sleep with my door closed anymore. I don't need to. Whatever needed it has already taught me what time means.